We're in this relationship series, and we've been using this clip, With Me, Without Me. What's the name of the movie? Come on. Night and Day. Great movie, fun movie. Lot going on in the movie, so I don't normally recommend movies. At least the movies I recommend normally get me in trouble, so I'm not recommending the movie, but I think it's a good movie, and so it's kind of fun to watch, and Kelly and I have enjoyed that movie. But in the movie, I mean, there's two different places in the movie. At this scene right here, he says, with me, without me, right? Your life expectancy, without me is here, with me is here, without me here, with me, right? At the very end of the movie, there's another clip, and I don't have that queued up, but now they're at the end of the movie, they're kind of riding off in the sunset together, and she now says to him, with me or without me, with me, without me. With me, without me. He kind of plays it back towards him, right? So he gets this big grin on his face, and he says, with you. See, when we talk about relationships require a minimum of two people. It requires, a healthy relationship requires the with component. Not the without component, right? It's the with component. And it's an interesting thing, it's that dynamic, we talked about it even last week, where we talked about our perceptions of others matter. The way we perceive others matter. And oftentimes what happens is in relationships begin to break down when we begin to view people through circumstances rather than through how God views them. If we could, I mean, would you admit with me that if we could see God, if we could see the way God sees people all the time, there would be no threat to relationship. Because we're always seeing the destiny in them. Even though we might be experiencing hurt or pain or disappointment, in the midst of relationship, we're continuing to keep our eyes fixed on how God sees them. So their value never decreases. Their value never moves based upon something they did or something they said or something they didn't say or something they didn't do. Their value is not placed in that. It's not placed in what's leaking out of them. It's placed in how God sees them. The reality is the garbage, the broken things that leak out of us, those things happen because we've forgotten who we are. And even maybe forgotten who you are. When my interaction with you changes, when it becomes dishonoring, when it becomes broken in some way where I'm not honoring your heart, caring for your heart, your value changes in me, I have lost perspective of how God sees you. You with me?
Yes.
Or are you without me? You with me?
With you.
With me. I like this side of the room better right now. They said with me, all right? Now remember, we talked about in this series, we talked about the goal of relationship is what? Do you remember? All right, well, let me help remind you. The goal of relationships is connection. The goal of relationship is connection. See, it's really interesting. It's really important to find the goal of your relationship. What is the goal of your relationship? In fact, let's hear what Danny Silk has to say about the goal of your relationship.
We're asking more relationship questions. Danny, if somebody's wanting to prepare for marriage, what would you say are some of the most common areas of struggle in marriage and reasons that people end up getting a divorce?
Probably the number one issue that leads to a divorce is that I've changed my goal. I've changed my goal from connection to distance.
Okay.
And as soon as I do that in any relationship, there's really nothing you can do right. Pretty much everything that you do, when my goal is distance with you, all you can do is feed my justification for keeping distance from you.
Okay.
So I misinterpret you, I judge you, and I assign motives to you that are not true, so that I can protect my distance from you.
Right.
So that's why it's so important that we learn to take responsibility for our goal in a relationship.
Okay.
If my goal is connection, then I need different skills to interact with you to create and to protect a connection.
Okay.
When my goal is distance, I have different skills, because all my skills help me create the distance that I need to protect myself from you.
Okay.
So, number one, am I managing my goal of connection with you, or have I changed my goal to distance?
Right.
I'd say that's the number one killer of relationships.
Okay. Now, you hear people say, I've just fallen out of love. I've fallen out of love. It's just not going to work. What would you say to people who are saying that when they're struggling in a relationship?
I would say you changed your goal.
Okay.
That's what happened.
Okay.
You didn't fall out of love. You didn't fall in love. You chose love.
Okay.
And you choose your goal.
Okay.
Love is not a big hole in the street that you fall in. You might have been very attracted to somebody and that felt fantastic.
Okay.
But love, no, you chose love. When you committed your life to somebody, maybe you didn't understand what you were doing, but that was a decision that you made. You decided to eliminate all your other options and to focus on this one person. And that's a decision. And if you didn't make that decision, bummer for you and the person that you so-called married,
Right.
because you don't understand covenant.
Okay.
But you choose love. You don't fall into it, and you don't fall out of it. You choose out of it, which makes you very responsible for what you do in a loving relationship.
Right. Great. Thank you.
All right.
So I don't know if Danny really knows what he's talking about, but I said that actually a little bit facetiously. I think Danny does know what he's talking about. In fact, the matter, I've coined some of the phrases that he has said too, and I've used those even in my own relationship with Kelly, and even in our own, and as our journey forward continues. And have you ever heard before? Have you ever heard me say that we have that love is a choice, and that we choose to love? And actually, in Kelly and my relationship, there was a season over the last couple of years where I actually was experimenting and I was changing the way I would speak my love to her. And I would say, Kelly, what would I say to you?
I choose you.
I choose you. I'm choosing you. And I was just trying to, because sometimes, how many times have you said, I love you, and when someone says I love you, you hear it and you go, yeah, thanks. I mean, you're just like, yeah, whatever. Right? But the power of the word almost needs to be redeemed in some ways. And so I was moving that around a little bit and starting to look at love as a choice for one another, right? This choice. But here's the deal. If the goal of relationship is connection, and inside of it, and now obviously he was talking about in this marriage context, but it really transcends marriages. It transcends friends. It goes into friendships. It goes into work environments with friends. It goes into colleagues. It goes into neighbors. Whatever it is between two people, I'm either choosing connection or I'm choosing something else, right? Like Danny said, I'm either choosing connection or I'm choosing distance. That's the word he used. I'm choosing connection or distance. How many of you know of any healthy relationship that's chosen distance? No hands. How many of you know healthy relationships that have chosen connection? All right. So connection is what we're after. It's the goal of relationship. But we also know that there are times in relationship where relationships are strained, circumstances, decisions are made, and most of the time when decisions are made that are hurtful, it's because I've made a decision regarding me and I didn't think about you in the relationship. Most of the time when we experience hurt in the relationship, it's because I made a decision about me in the relationship and I didn't include you. And you're part of that relationship. And so when we make decisions not considering each other, we have the potential to create hurt or pain or negative momentum, right? And then, of course, you know that what is very natural inside of us is this thing that's called self-protection. And what happens is if you say you're in relationship with me and you're not caring for my heart in the relationship, guess what you're requiring me to do? I am now required to take care of my heart in the relationship, which is my responsibility anyway. But if I know that you're going to protect my heart, I don't have to stand guard all the time. I can allow you to have access to my heart. You can come in, you can run around, you can play, you can whatever you want to do inside of my heart, as long as you honor my heart, and I trust that you'll honor my heart. How many of you long for a relationship like that? Where you can be fully known, and that person you fully trust that person. That person has total access to you. They can come in, they can run around, they can look underneath the bed, they can look in the closets, they can look everywhere. And there's so much transparency in the relationship because there's so much trust in the relationship. You long for a relationship? That's what relationships, that's what healthy God relationships look like. Jesus was a genius at this. Jesus, and we said this a little bit last week, that Jesus had the capacity to walk into the lives of people, and when he left, they loved him. They really liked him. I'm not talking about the religious culture of the day. He would engage the religious culture of the day, and they were threatened by him. Of course, because they were threatened by him, because he was challenging their paradigms, they ended up going into self-protection mode, right? And they're going to say, we got to kill this guy, because if we don't kill him, he's going to destroy everything that we've grown and spent so much time growing controls, all the control stuff for people. But Jesus was a genius at this. And so Jesus had this thing down. He would enter into people's lives. He would not allow the circumstance around the person to define them. He would keep the definition of them from God's perspective, from the Father's perspective. He would see them as God sees them. He would pull the destinies out of them. He would challenge them where they were at. And the way he would challenge them is he would call them into their destiny. Call them up from where they were at. He didn't blame them for where they were at. He didn't remind them of where they were at. He would call them into a new place. Amazing guy. He treated people like royalty. He treated people with value. The question is, do other people's broken choices, or could we even say sin, their wrong thought about you that created a behavior, does that need to be punished, or does it need to be controlled? We talked about it a little bit last week, and we even in 1 John 2:1 says this, my little children, I am writing these things to you so that you may not sin. And if anyone does sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous. Jesus Christ having the right perspective of who God is. And so Jesus had this capacity of living heart to heart. And where he didn't choose to live in a set of rules. He chose to connect. He chose to live heart to heart. He didn't live with this place of I got to do this, I don't got to do this. He didn't go there. He didn't try to defend some idea about what culture would want you to feel or to live or believe about you. He continued to see you from heaven, and he worked from a culture of love. And the culture of love is a culture. It's culture of the kingdom is a culture of love. And the culture of love is one of relationship. That means the culture of love is one of connection. So, let me ask you, in your relationships, I'm reminding you of when I asked you last week, I asked you guys to kind of evaluate your relationships and find out what relationships do you have where it's a heart-to-heart connection, and what relationships are you carrying right now that's really not about a heart-to-heart connection, it's really about something else. You might ask yourself, well, wait a minute, what is my role? What is my part in a heart-to-heart connection? It's a safe thing to ask. It's the right thing to ask. Because in asking that, you're not asking, I wonder what their part is in our heart-to-heart connection. You've taken your eyes off of them for a moment and what they're bringing to the table, and you've actually put, so to speak, the responsibility of you on the table. And how many of you, let me tell you one of the most freeing things you'll ever hear. No one's responsible for you but you. You're the only one that's responsible for you. No one else is. And that should be a freeing statement. Because in relationship, you're responsible for you. Because you have authority over you. One of the things you hear in the business realm a lot is when you're given responsibility with no authority, it's called stupid. Because you need to have authority in order to make the decisions necessary in the area of your responsibility. And many of us, we feel like we want to control the other people in our relationships. We want to control what they do or say, because if we can control them, then they may not hurt us. But the reality is, in order to control someone, it means you have to be responsible for them, and it also means you have to have authority to be able to make the decisions for them. And how's that? Has anybody ever tried that before? Has it ever worked very well? It's kind of left us in a destitute place. It's probably emotionally bankrupted us, and we're probably sitting in a place going, I just don't know, what am I going to do? And we take on this victim role, right? Because I'm just a punching bag, or I'm just a person that I'm at the mercy of someone else in the relationship. Because we haven't stood up and taken the responsibility of managing us well. Our half of us well. So I must manage my heart in our relationship. It's my responsibility, it's not their responsibility. I must manage my view of that person in my relationship. I have to regulate and manage my view of them. Where am I getting my view of them from? Is it from their behavior? Is it from what people say about them? Is it from the media? Or is it from what God says about them? So we have the value of heaven's picture of someone that we have to keep in front of us. And then we also have to know that we have to manage our half of us well. Because the interesting thing, in relationships, a choice is made. Choices are made in relationship. And what's that choice in relationship? Danny said it. Let me remind you again. What is it? It's either to connect or it's to disconnect. I'll say it again. In relationship, I have a choice. And in every relationship, at all times, I can either connect or I can choose to disconnect. In order, if you wanted, Bill Johnson made this quote, I made this statement, I don't want to steal it from him. Oftentimes, if you say it 3 times, it's now yours. So I've said this more than 3 times, but I still want to give him credit. He had made this comment about the Holy Spirit. He was talking about a dove, and he says, if a dove came and landed on your shoulder, and you didn't want it to leave, how would you walk? You would walk with the dove in mind. Rocket science, man, that's amazing. If you're in relationships, and the relationships are valuable, and you don't want damage, and you don't want disconnection, you don't want distance in relationship, how should you walk in that relationship? You should walk with the other in mind. See, in the same way we choose love, we choose honor. See, honor is another one of those things that we choose. I can either choose to honor you, and if I don't choose to honor you, I'm open to the opposite, which is to dishonor you. So I have to keep honor in front of me. I have to keep my honor on, my love on, so to speak. And so I either am going to choose connection or I'm going to choose distance. So the question is, in your relationships, what have you chosen? Are you choosing connection? Or are you choosing distance? Is there a hurt there that's happened? And that's what, in most relationships, when distance is the choice, it's because I've been hurt and I don't know how to manage that yet. Right? But in distance, there is no possibility of reconciliation. Because, like Danny said, everything that's happening is I'm reinforcing my reason to distance myself from you. That's what I'm now defending. I'm defending my choice to distance myself. Rather than, no, I'm choosing to connect. So what's your goal in the relationship? What is your goal? What are you protecting? When I protect my heart, what I'm saying is I'm protecting my heart from you. When I'm in a protection mode, right? So if I'm not choosing you, it means I'm not choosing you. It's just two different ends. Another person said it this way, that all relationships can be put into two categories. I like this kind of figuring things out. I like things nice in their place and structured and formulatic. I love this kind of stuff. So that's just my wiring. So when we have relationships in one of two categories, and this person had a counselor's perspective that said that either relationships are collaborative or they're competitive, one or the other. They're either working together for a common goal, or there is this competitive thing where we're always trying to edge up. And that actually self-protection, this place of self-protection, this place of saying, I'm going to protect my heart, is actually a competitive piece. Because what we're saying is, I win. You can't have me. You can't have my heart. You won't hurt me. And so when we're in that posture, we have this competitive thing going on in relationships, and in competitive there's always a winner and a loser. But dream about with me what relationships would look like if they're collaborative. We're going there together. Yeah, it's going to be rough. We're going to have some bumps in the road. We're going to figure things out. But in the midst of it, we're doing it together. We're going to figure it out. We're going to get there. So think about that. Think about the differences in relationships in that way. You know, love and fear displace one another, friends. We've learned that already, right? So when I choose love, I'm choosing connection. When I'm choosing relationship. And if I don't, I'm heading actually into the dark side of the force. Yeah, you don't want to go there. It's a dark place, and it's a hurtful place, and it's a place where life, the darkness wants to quench the light. But friends, every one of you you have been filled with light. And so imagine with me what relationships could look like if we chose to connect with each other. If we chose connection. Huh? Imagine what that would look like. All right.